Welcome to Cork Talk on a Sunday evening, and nice to see you all. Well, can't see you all, but you can see me and I can imagine you out there. And do we have a fun evening lined up for you this evening? Because we're going to be talking to none other than Mr. Lenz Moser. Lenz has experience already from Austria, where his family company's from, but he is just joining us now and he's going to tell us all about it. Hi, Lenz. I'll just see where we go. I'm accepting his... Lenz should be with us in just a second, I'm hoping. There we go. Accept. There we go. Accepted. There he is. Look at that. God,
hey,
technology.
Super. Good evening.
Technology, amazing. It works. Here I am talking to you in Austria. Where are you? You're not in Vienna, are you? You must be in the Burgenland.
Yes, I'm in the Burgenland, Frauenkirchen, in the famous Seewinkel of Burgenland.
Fantastic. So you're near the lake?
Yes. We're very close to the lake, yeah.
Yeah. I'm always amazed by that lake because it's so shallow, isn't it?
It's barely a meter deep and it's shrinking. So if we're not careful, it's going to dry out.
Oh, is it really? Are you noticing that a lot with climate change?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
But it dried out in the Middle Ages as well. So and then water came back. So we are hopeful.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That's always one. I love going across that lake on those ferries. You know, very very shallow ferries. Anyway, tonight we have got a really fascinating tasting because most people send me 4 of their own wines, and Lenz has sent me 1 of his own wine and 3 other wines to try with it, which is really interesting. So we're going to do a bit of a live comparative tasting. But before we do that and talk about your fascinating new chapter Gruner project, I think we're just going to talk a bit about you, because you've got such a fascinating backstory, beginning with your family. I mean, your family's been in wine since 1610, and your grandfather was so famous that he's actually got a trellising system named after him. We'll hear about him. And your dad, I think, was the first person to introduce biodynamics into Austria, as far as wine was concerned, in the 70s. And as we're going to hear, you've done a lot of innovation of your own too. Just tell us a bit about your grandfather. Did you get to know your grandfather when you were a kid?
Yes, he was one of my first really great mentors because he brought me into the vineyards. At the age of 6, he would come every other Saturday and ask me if I want to join him to explore the vineyards and to get to know more the grape varieties and his trellising system, of course, but also about the soil. He was the guy who really would dig up the soil and said, "Son, smell it." And you really can smell good soil from not so good soil. Yeah. And there's a lot of other things that he taught me at the very early stage.
So good soil smells of soil, right? And bad soil just smells of nothing. It's like being on sand.
Yeah, absolutely. No, bad soil even smells bad, by the way, because you can taste and smell if it's too much fertilizers. And he always did take apart this piece of dirt and show me all the bugs and the worms and everything. So there's so much going on which still hasn't been explored fully, but he was on his way already.
Yeah, I mean, a good soil is alive, isn't it? You can see it literally moving, you know,
absolutely.
With bugs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, I mean, I didn't know this until you told me that your grandfather was kind of responsible for Gruner being so widely planted in Austria. Is that true? And it's to do with the trellising system, right?
Yes, absolutely, because he was a very practical person, and in the 20s and the 30s of last century, he was looking for the ideal grape variety for his new trellising system, and he found red, the Blauer Zweigel grape, and certainly Gruner from the white side. And he had a nursery as well. And once he got on something, he was a very, very stubborn person. Then he promoted Gruner as much as he could. And he took Gruner from less than 1% in the 20s of last century to about 30% when he died in the late 70s.
So he was very influential, wasn't he? Because he was a professor of viticulture. You know, he was a very important figure in Austrian wine.
Well, he still is a legend. I still meet people, especially older people, who say, "Hey, I knew your grandfather." And when he was giving his speeches on the hill of Rondorf, where I came from, hordes of people would come, and he would really tell them how the new trellising system works.
Yeah.
And through that, he won people's hearts and brains at the same time.
And do people still use the Lenz Moser system, the trellising system?
They in principle, yes, but of course it has been developed. So now the canopy is much different than it was at the beginning, because at the beginning he said less intervention is better. So the branches would just go wild. But nowadays it's much more disciplined and much better, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and you studied enology, but before you went to university studying enology, you went to Bordeaux, didn't you? And you kind of fell in love with Cabernet Sauvignon at Chapter Gruener in the Medoc. What happened? Was it love at first sight?
It was, well, my father was a big Bordeaux lover himself, and therefore he sent me to Bordeaux at a very early stage to Château Gruener, where I spent the summer in my mid-teens. And so I learned French, and I got to know the wines there. And obviously, when you got to know Bordeaux better, you have to fall in love because it's still the benchmark.
Yeah, and then you finished your degree, and then you started working in the family wineries. Everybody in your family called Lenz. Well, not the women, obviously, because you had 4 sisters, didn't you? They weren't called Lenz, but everyone else, all the men are called Lenz, right?
No, I'm the only boy, and as a good friend of mine always used to say, Lenz is the only boy or a single child with 4 sisters, and that sums it up. Because I thank God I was the firstborn. Otherwise, I would not have survived.
Okay, yeah. So how long did you spend in the family business before you went off to work for Robert Mondavi, didn't you?
I spent in total a good part of 15 years. I took over the winery after it was sold in 87, after Austria's wine scandal. And we rebuilt it with the help of our investors to one of the most modern wineries in Central Europe. And I could leave only because it was very, very profitable and healthy. And then in 97, 98, I joined Robert Mondavi.
Yeah. So did you have to sell the winery because of the scandal? Anybody watching may not know this. Well, I think most people would, but there was a scandal. It began in Germany, not in Austria, didn't it? The diethylene glycol scandal, which it didn't kill people. It was just a scandal. It was people extending blends, wasn't it? They're doing bigger blends. But it really hit Austria very hard, didn't it?
Yeah, it definitely hit us very hard. A lot of people went to jail who were involved. My family was not involved, but we lost more or less the company because at the time we were the largest exporter. 40% of our turnover went abroad, mainly to Germany. And when you lose that, and when the containers come back from Canada and from the US, then you have financial problems. So my father sold the winery. I never had a stake in the winery because I was too young. Yeah. But my father sold the winery, and the day the deal was sealed, I became general manager. Yeah. That was sometimes in 87, and then I stayed on for another 10 years to rebuild the whole thing from the ashes.
Yeah. So it must have been heartbreaking for your dad, right?
Yeah, it took him a couple of years, but my father is also a very positive person, and he's 93, and in many ways he's a role model for me because he's still fit as a flea. He's healthy. Yeah. His brain works sometimes too much, but he's a good boy, and I'm very, very proud of him.
I had a bottle of red wine with my dad last night, who's still in good form. He's 90. His brain's still good, and he's a little bit frail, but it was good fun. Yeah. Well, good. Yeah. Good. Best wishes to your dad. I just want to ask you whether you think that the scandal wasn't good for your business, obviously, but do you think with hindsight it was a good thing for Austria?
Well, if it would not have happened, we would have to invent it, quite frankly, because something was wrong. And even I was still, after my studies, when I joined Les Moser Winery, I worked there for a couple of years until this whole thing happened, but we never knew what was going on. I just knew fundamentally something's wrong. And at the end, quite frankly, for my personal career, it was great. Quite frankly, because I became GM at the age of 30, very, very early. And I had the chance to have this springboard of Lenz Moser Winery to get to know the Mondavis and to work for them for almost 10 years. So no complaints.
Yeah. And what did you learn from the Mondavis? Because, I mean, when Robert set up the Mondavi Winery, I think he was in his 50s, but mid-50s. And yet he was just a dynamo, wasn't he? What did you learn from working with him?
Well, he had this JFDI approach, as I always called it, so just do it. I think he was really
Just
this man. And
do it.
by the way, this was
I
the
like the
last
just.
words. No,
He said it before Nike, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A long time ago, time. Phil Knight was in his earlies. So no, this were even the last words I heard from him saying in 2005, because that was our last meeting when we closed the bar at Brick's restaurant in Oakville, a memorable evening. And he always told me, if you do something, focus and do it with passion. And I think this word passion, is typical. You know him, and the guy was such an inspiration. I mean, I remember an evening at Vinexpo, and he called us to a late dinner at 11 at La Tupina, it. And at 3 o'clock, I said, Bob, I really need to go to bed, because after he said, what, these young men, they cannot take anything. So, I mean, he was going on, he was ranting, but he was always full of wisdom. Great guy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was lucky enough to meet him a couple of times, and always fascinating to talk to, and as you said, that kind of energy was just amazing. I find that, I think you find it too, very contagious about the States, and I think England's a bit like Austria in the sense that people like to complain and they think you'll come up with reasons why they can't do something, whereas Americans, it's always reasons why you can do something, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. He was always positive and always you can do better and all this stuff. So that's what I take from him and the family in California altogether. This spirit, this can-do spirit is amazing, because as you said, in Austria we sometimes complain a little bit too much.
Not as much as we do. We're the world champions of complaining, I think, aren't we?
Oh, I'm not so sure. Come to Austria more often.
No, the French are the world champions of complaining, but we'd be in the semi-finals, I think.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Maybe against Austria in the semi-finals. Anyway, look, tell me about Gruner. So when you took over the company, I mean, you had this connection with Gruner through your grandfather. There was lots of Gruner around, but what was the reputation of Gruner at that point?
Well, in the late 70s, early 80s, Gruner would never appear, or very rarely, on labels. Why? Because it was the cheap, mass-produced variety. At the time, it was not rare that between 20 and 30 tons of Gruner were harvested from a hectare, and so people,
that's massive. I mean, that's huge.
That's massive. That's really massive for Austrian vineyards. That's very massive, because nowadays quality wine, Qualitätswein, the maximum is about 10,000 kilograms. So that's how the disparity was with the past. But since my grandfather promoted the grape, and his legacy to me was, Austria is so small, 1% of the world wine production. So all you need is basically a white, forget the red, but if you have to have a red, it's Zweigl. And so I, very early in my career, when I started working, I was focusing on Gruner. Because I liked it, quite frankly, I liked it, and my father liked it. So we were the first ones to put it on a label of Lenz Moser selection at the time in the varietal range, which I obviously learned from the Mondavis, because they were big on varietals. Yeah,
but families like the Knolls and the Hirzbergers and the Bodensteins, they existed presumably, didn't they? Nikolai Hoff, but did they not make Gruner?
Yes, they did, but the Knoll or the FX Pichler or the Hirzberger phenomenon started late 80s. People always tend to forget that all these people were doing the Austrian Magnum, which is the double-liter bottle, much more than they would do the 750s. That they didn't exist at the time, and if the Yamex and the Pragas and the Salomons in particular at this time put something on, it was the vineyard name, like Steinriegel,
like Achleiten or something, or
Achleiten, absolutely,
Honeyvogel or whatever.
The grape variety didn't really show up there.
Interesting. So I hadn't realised quite how recent the rise of Gruner was, particularly Gruner as a quality grape, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just tell us a little bit about Gruner as a grape. You said why you like it, but what's it like to work with, both in the vineyard and also in the cellar? How do you get the best out of it?
Gruner is a grape which is very easily grown. So if you treat it well, you can put it on different soils, and it always goes well in a cool climate, especially like in Austria. That's changing now, but generally speaking, it's very happy to grow here in this country, especially in Wachau, Kamptal, Kremstal, Treisental, a little bit of Weinviertel. Not so much in Burgenland. It's too warm there. So here where I live, Gruner is not the thing. So that's number one. Number two, I think if you limit the yield in the vineyard, you get a damn good wine.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I just had Hirzberger Honigvogel in several vintages last weekend, and, you know, we had it together with Burgundy, and boy, it's really tough to distinguish because there's so luscious there. So, and what Gruner brings in addition to class is also always a good acidity balance. So it's very lively, even when it's a big boy, like the Smaragd from the Wachau. And therefore, I always liked it. And I want to bring Gruner to the world, that's for sure.
And does it reflect terroir? I mean, there are lots, you get lots of, you know, very different terroir in Austria. You mentioned some of those reasons, you know, whether it be Kamptal or the Wachau will be very different in style, wouldn't it? And does Gruner reflect that from the soil?
Absolutely. No, Gruner grown on loess and clay is completely different than Gruner on limestone, like in the Treisental, and then again in the Wachau, where it's much more minerally. So it really reflects, and this is very good because you have all these different types of Gruner in Austria. And
what about Gruner with oak? I mean, most people are using bigger ovals on. They're using food effectively.
This is a tricky subject. I tried it.
Tell us.
I tried it once, and I made a wine in 11, 12, and 13 with a different project than I do now, and I still enjoy these bottles because we did it in very, very small quantities, and we used a special barrel, the T5 from Taranceau, which is a special barrel only made by 5 people at Taranceau, especially a long aging of the wood and careful coopering, and that really works very well. But I don't think this is the style of Gruner we want to bring to the world in a larger quantity.
Okay, so you decided that you want to bring Gruner to the world, right? And you're doing it with this wine, what we're going to taste now, which is New Chapter, right? Just tell us who you're doing it with and how you met him, because there's a bit of a generational thing going on here, and where the grapes come from and the style of wine that you're trying to make here. So it's New Chapter, and we're going to have the 2021, yeah?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Well, New Chapter is a new chapter for Markus and myself, for the Gruner grape, and also for...
Just tell us who Markus is, but people may not know Markus.
Markus Huber is one of the shooting stars here in Austria when it comes to white wine making in particular. He just launched also a delightful rosé, which you know, Whispering Angel and the likes will have to look out. It's really good stuff.
Whispering Angel is LVMH now, so
yes, of course, yeah, the big animal, yeah. But Markus and I go back 15 years, and we became even closer during the last 2 years in lockdown when we said, let's do something together in order to create a more global approach to Gruner, not in the making of the wine, but in the global approach to selling and distribution, because 95 of Gruner is sold in the German-speaking world, and I cannot see this to be a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But so is that mostly Austria or also Germany and Switzerland?
No, it's basically 80% Austria, then the rest is Germany, and a little bit in Switzerland.
Right. Okay.
So that's it. But we did a lot of research, and it's basically due to the fact that Gruner abroad is sold at maximum €5 ex cellars. That's something 10 euros on a shelf, and or 10 quid, and it's also not good enough in a sense that it's too peppery, sometimes too spicy for people on the export side. So what's lacking sometimes is quality and elegance, and therefore Markus and I said, let's change that.
Yeah. And these are from Marcus's vineyards, aren't they? I mean, his family are quite big vineyard holders, very good sites. Again, I mean, his wines are fantastic. I agree. What you made the right choice.
No, it was pure coincidence because he called me one day during lockdown, and we got together. Since we knew each other, he could be my son anyway, so he's a little bit younger than I. But I love to work with younger people because that's energy and that's new things as well. Yeah. And so we are 50-50 partners. We founded our own company called Lenz and Markus his name. Yeah. And our goal is, our purpose, I should even say, is to bring Gruner outside the German-speaking world much more than it's now.
Okay, so it's partly packaging, yeah. It's partly the name. Obviously, you've got an English name on it, and it's also the style, isn't it? I mean, you said you don't want to make it too peppery. Tell us what else you're doing in the winery. Like, I mean, are you doing any malolactic? Is there any oak influence, any wood influence at all on the wine?
It's pretty simple winemaking. On Marcus, this is Marcus's side, more or less, but there's definitely no malolactic because it will kill the vibrancy of the wine. We tried it, but it's not the thing we want to do. And basically, it's an assemblage, or it's a cuvée from the best sites of Marcus's vineyards. Especially 2021 is 100% from his own vineyards, where we have 15 parcels which we blended with about 10% oak influence of larger and smaller barrels, in order to give it more complexity. And there's something else. We played also with some different grape varietals. So there's about 5%. And there's 5 different other grape varieties. We don't talk too much about it, but I think it's time to tell people that in order to enhance the style for more elegance and more acceptability and quality on the export side, but also on the Austrian and German side, don't get me wrong, because this is still a big chunk of our market already is. We play with blends down to 1%, and you would be surprised how much the nature of wine can change with 1% difference.
And you can't say what the other 5 are.
Well, it's the obvious ones, because, you know, that's the ones growing. It's the Riesling, it's Sauvignon Blanc, and the usual suspects anyway. But it's something we did in order, and it's only 5%. 95% is Gruner, and legally we are entitled to do 15%, but we don't use that. We only use 5%. In order to create what we call tomorrow's Gruner today, because we feel Gruner, to be successful in the future, it has to change its style a little bit towards more elegance and finesse, more fruit. But the elegance, I think, is the most important thing at a very, very high quality level, because Marcus and I pick from his best sites and blend them together according to the style we think is right.
And the predominant soil type is limestone, isn't it?
It's 100% limestone.
Okay,
because
I
the style is limestone based. And that gives us the possibility of achieving the elegance we need.
Yeah, I mean, I like 2 things about this. One is it's floral, but it doesn't have, you know, as you said, the white pepper or the bay leaf notes that you sometimes get in Gruner Veltliner. It's very, very focused and fresh. It's refreshing. You know, I've just had 2 sips of it. I'm happy to get another one later. I'm not like you. You only have wine every other day, don't you?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
That's why I look like shit and you look great, you see, right?
But the record between my wife and myself is 29 minutes emptying a bottle over spaghetti. We couldn't beat it, but this is rare that we drink that fast. But it shows, for me, it shows something that it's very, very drinkable at the high quality level. This is what we want to achieve, because we're asking a lot of money for the wine, but we want to give back a lot of pleasure and something new. And that's why we decided for our own bottle. It's a Lenz bottle. It's a new Chapter bottle. And the beauty is we have now bottled the Magnum as well, which is really dramatic. In this
Just tell us what the price will be, roughly. What is the price?
The price will be around 30 pounds in your country, and 30 euros in across the ditch in Europe for most part. And that's a lot of money, because that's the Cloudy Bay positioning, Carbonier and others. But I think that's important in order to have a sustainable quality improvement program in place year after year.
Okay, I think that's important. Yeah, and do you have an importer in the UK, just for anybody watching?
Yes, we work. We're proud to work with Bibendum.
Yeah.
For you know, I know Michael for 20 years, and I'm really happy with this relationship.
Okay, so if anybody's interested, they can either go to your website or they can get in contact with Bibendum. Let's look at the other wines, because you very generously sent me 3 other bottles of wine, which is very nice. One is a Robert Weil Trocken Riesling from the Rheingau, fantastic producer. Just tell us what have you learned from this, in a sense? I mean, are you trying to learn from these other wines? Or do you regard them as a competitive set?
No, I'm really proud to say that Wilhelm Weil from Robert Weil is a friend of mine, and he did me a big favor last year when we launched New Chapter, that he put it on his own Instagram account and did a 2-minute video about it. and really saying exactly what I would have said about the wine. So he got the message immediately. And what I'm learning from him basically is two things. First of all, he's a very, very good businessman. He's dramatic. His business results are very good. And on the other hand, he has a consistent approach to winemaking, which led to the fact that he's one of the best in Germany, according to German journalists in particular.
Yeah.
And apart from that, he's a very nice guy as well.
Yeah, it's interesting comparing the two wines because Riesling obviously has a lower pH and higher acidity and is slightly more austere, particularly in a Trocken style. You know, and I could see that most members of the public, I think, would go for the Gruner over the Riesling. You know, we professionals who are Riesling geeks might say, "Oh, I love the Riesling," but I think that maybe the Gruner's a little bit more friendly, maybe, and certainly right now.
Well, in this particular case, I choose Thurmberg because Thurmberg is one of the three vineyard designated Rieslings from Wilhelm Bayer, apart from the Große Gewächs.
Yeah.
And for me, it's my favorite wine because it's the coolest site. It's the most elevated, as you know, and it's my absolute favorite. I buy at least 3 or 4 cases a year and share them amongst friends because this is one of my favorite wines from Germany.
And it's quite tight, young, really. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It needs to age. To age, but believe me, I'm drinking now New Chapter 2020 as well. Yeah. And it's getting better every day. So I like wines for longevity, and Markus as well. He is very, very high on wines who can age well. Yeah.
We've got a Sauvignon, one which is La Doucette, the Puy Fumé, which we're going to try first, which is, I think, unwooded, isn't it? So Lees unwooded, classic Loire Sauvignon Blanc. On what soils? A little bit of limestone there or not?
Well, I don't really know. I've never visited the winery there. I only know Patrick de la Doucette from the old days from Mondavi. And at that time, I fell in love with this Puy Fumé because, you know, we had this Fumé Blanc at Robert Mondavi. So we did benchmark with Puy Fumé a lot. And it's one of the classics in our trade. You go to China, you go to Australia, you go to the Americas, you will always find this wine. It's always reliable. It's always good. And it reflects the Sauvignon Blanc style from the old world as opposed to...
So what are you learning from this wine? Again, it's part of your... It's inspiring in a way, is it? It's success?
For me, it's still a very, very restrained, but it's inspiring wine. It tells me that you have to turn into a classic sooner or later, and then you don't have to shout too much, but rather whisper over time. Yeah, don't be too obvious. And I'm not criticizing the New Zealanders. They have done a fantastic job the last 30, 40 years, especially Caribe and some others. But I have a different philosophy. I want to go more old world style, and this is much more on the shy side.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk to you about China in a minute, but let's go with this now, which is Chapter Gruener, which is I'm pretty sure is Sauvignon with a little bit of Semillon. I don't think any Muscadel. That tends to be used in the sweet wines.
It's Muscadel there as well.
There is Muscadel as well.
I'm pretty sure. And
then a degree of barrel fermentation, so classic Pessac style, really. Tell us what you learned. I mean, you love Bordeaux. We know that, particularly red Bordeaux. Tell us what you learned from this.
What I learned from this wine for the last 20 years, when I find it on a list, I buy it automatically, regardless the vintage, because usually it's much older vintages on wine lists, especially in Paris or in France itself. And that's something where I think as a wine lover, that's loyalty. And that's what I want to create also for our wines, as loyal as I am to Robert Weil and to La Doucette, and also in particular to Gruener. That's something, and especially my wife, when we have to celebrate or when we celebrate something, and then it has to be a Gruener, quite frankly, alongside New Chapter, of course, but this is her favorite, and then she knows that I love her.
It's like your house wine, is it?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a very nice house wine to have. I think the inspiring thing about this wine is how well the oak is done.
Yeah,
you know, you barely notice it. You know, it's there, but it's not oak that's sort of punching you in the face. You know, it's oak that, as you said, it's that slightly subtler approach, really. I mean, I like New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc as well, but you know, they're not that they're oaked a lot of the time, but the flavors are much bigger and bolder and richer, aren't they? These are a little bit more graceful, in inverted commas, just in case anybody from New Zealand's watching.
I can't believe how inexpensive this wine is, because it's so unbelievably good and unmistakable Carbonier style for me. Yeah. And I drink other wines from this area as well, but I always come back to this one. Of course, Pape Clément and you know, and all these guys. But that's a different ballgame. But at around 30-35 euros on the continent, it's unbeatable.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, those are great. And thank you for sending those other wines in and telling us a little bit about those and what inspired you. Listen, I want to talk to you about China, because the Chinese side of your story, what you've got up to there, is really interesting. Just tell us when you went there for the first time and why you went there. Were you invited to go there? What made you think, hey,
No. I was founding, you know, after Mondavi, we said there's a life after Robert Mondavi. In 2004, it was sold at the end, and in 2005, we went on our own, and I founded my own company, and I was curious. That's why I went to China. And a good friend of mine said, explore the East a little bit, and he told me, it's a true story. If you find a decent wine in China, the first container is on me. You can ship it to me automatically. This was a Dutch guy. And I really did ship a container. At the end, he wasn't too happy with the quality, but he kept his word. No, because at the beginning, mind you, in 2005, there was not much in China. There was not much going on. There was not too much talk about wine. The wine boom came in 2006, 2007, as you know. With all the French craze and Bordeaux and everything. So I was just ahead of the game a little bit. And I loved it. I was curious, and I'm learning so much from the Chinese people themselves. So that's why I went there.
And did you learn Mandarin or not?
Oh my God, this is my weak point. Tim, this is not fair.
Well, you're a very good linguist. I mean, your English is perfect, and you speak good French too.
Three times I tried. And I even got to a stage where I gave speeches in Chinese, 2.5 minutes, but I was sick of always forgetting the stuff. Yeah. So because it's so complicated in the sense that you have to remember so much. The language per se is not so difficult to me, but you have to have an enormous wealth of vocabulary, and that my travel schedule, this is not working out. And
so how did you end up working with Chateau Changyu?
Very simple. After 10 years working with Changyu, with the mothership in Yantai, which is one of the larger wineries of this world, they are doing 150 million bottles every year. Wow. We decided Lenz is going to make the wine of Chateau Changyu Moser 15, which existed at that time already. It was inaugurated in 2013, and I had a marketing contract, but it didn't work out because the quality there was not enough for the international market. So in 2015, I went to China on a very good contract proposal from Mr. Zhou, the chairman of the company. And I explored the region. I made the wine, did the strategy and the concept, the label. Everything was done here in Europe, but I was telecommuting at the time already. And ever since, it's working.
And you went to Ningxia, didn't you? Why did you go there?
I went to Ningxia direct because I was really lucky, and I think luck, in all modesty plays a role in life. In 2009, Mr. Zhou did ask me, where would you like to have a chateau with your name on? Not that I know anything, but I own anything, but I explored China, went around, and some people directed me towards Ningxia, and I told him Ningxia. And so they built the chateau in a matter of 3 years. And then I was lucky to take over where it was. So, you know.
So you said go to Ningxia and they just built a chateau for you?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, in all fairness, they built 8 chateaux altogether until now. Yeah? So they have 8 chateaux.
And is your name above the door?
Yes, of course, yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Now, I've been to China several times, but I've not been to Ningxia. I'd love to go. But what sounds really interesting is it's close to Mongolia, right? Yes. And to the Himalayas. And it gets unbelievably cold in winter, doesn't it? So, and you get diurnal variation anyway, but it gets so cold in winter that, is it true you have to bury the vines?
Yes, of course. Yeah, this is a technique we have to apply. because the vine tree dies at -17. And it gets at least -20 to 25. And I've been there in January, February. That's what it is. So we have to bury the vines. Very, very important. Otherwise, the vineyards would be dead.
So how do you do it? Do you actually bend the vine and bury it, or do you just put lots of earth on top of it?
We grow the vines not in the usual fashion, but we grow them in 45 degrees, bend them down with hand, and then we plow it in. That's all. The unbearing is a little bit more complicated because you have to do it manually. You cannot do it with a tractor because you don't know exactly where the wine trees are. Otherwise you would hurt them. But that's about 40% of our labor cost. But labor is still not a big factor in China.
It's very cheap. But and then you use water as well. Do you flood the vineyard?
Yes, that's a speciality of some wineries and us in particular, because when you make a giant ice cube, you have 100% protection against frost because an ice cube doesn't get colder and than it is, and so it's also very positive for bud break because we unbury end of March, beginning of April, and within a week we have bud break, and then we have the same growing season as in Europe.
So are the vines underwater, or are you just spraying water onto them to protect the buds?
No. The vines are in the soil, about 30 centimeters soil. Then we let the water flood, and it's a giant lake, if you like, because everything is done in the flat. You cannot do vineyard growing or vineyards in the mountains because you only have rocks and you need to bury. So that's why all the vineyards are in the plain.
Have you ever seen that system anywhere else in the world?
Yeah, my grandfather did it in the old Soviet Union.
Did he?
Yeah, he's been everywhere, I tell you. And he did it, and he also invented this 45 degrees because bending 90 degrees breaks the vineyard. Yeah. And that's not a good thing, especially when you have quality wines as a goal.
How interesting. And you're working only with Cabernet Sauvignon there, and you're making what, 6 different Cabernets, including 2 white Cabernets, is that right?
Yes. We make 4 reds and 2 whites, all Cabernet Sauvignon, 1 non-barrique stainless steel, 1 in aged barrique, and 2 in French New Oak, aged always 2 years. That seems to be a good time span for our wines. And I even age one white Cabernet, which I'm particularly proud of because I benchmarked always with Ridge and Chateau Montelena and having tons of fun fooling people a little bit.
That's good. And your top wine is called Purple Air Comes from the East, which is a lovely name. It sounds like a Chinese proverb, is it, or something? I don't know.
Yes, it is. Yeah, you're being kind. A colleague, journalist of yours, said a rather cumbersome name, and she's right, by the way. But this was a dream from the beginning. I got this calligraphy of these 4 characters, which I had the privilege of watching painting or designing. Or it took for these 4 characters, which are really large, it's 2 meters wide, the poster, it took a half an hour. And ever since I knew this is the name and the label practically for my icon wine, because we knew that our Yun would be coming. We knew that Lafite is doing their own thing, and we wanted to rub shoulders with the French.
It's interesting. Somebody said they'd love to try the white Cabernet. Does it taste of Cabernet, even though it's white?
Say again?
Somebody said they'd love to try the white Cabernet. Does the white wine still taste like a little bit? Oh, it does have tannin, obviously, but does it have those sort of leafy blackcurrant cassis Cabernet notes?
No. I'm afraid not. It's something else. A lot of people in China say, yes, it tastes like Cabernet Sauvignon a little bit because they want it to taste, because red wine is the big thing in China, and I call it the red wine in disguise. Yeah. And therefore we sell it in China very successfully, meanwhile, as the red wine lover's white.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm just interested in, you know China very well, and some companies have gone into China, have done very badly. There have been real problems. What would your advice be, in a sense? You know, how have you made it work when other companies from Europe have not fared so well?
Basically, it's staying the course. I think that's it. After 17 years, I can say I have a solid relationship with my partners, becoming quasi-friends, however difficult that might be. But after 17 years, and I think I traveled 68 times to China and had lots of rounds of Gambay with Mr. Sun, the CEO here in Europe and there in China, and not always being 100% sober, which is very popular in China if the European drinks with the Chinese.
Yeah.
And I think it's a relationship thing when you want to be successful. And the first 10 years were not easy for me. I was a lot younger, much more impatient. So that was a steep learning curve and a tough period of time. But I had good advisors to always say, stay the course. And I think if you share a common vision, like we do with Chateau Moser 15, making wines belonging in the company of the world's finest as a vision, as a goal, then that's a very, very good glue for us.
And it's interesting. I mean, the Chinese were obviously very focused on Bordeaux and drinking top Cru Classé. What's happening now? Are they accepting wines like yours, which sells for £150 a bottle? Are the Chinese becoming a bit more sort of patriotic in a sense?
Well, basically, what I can say from our end, Chateau Moser 15 is by far the #1 chateau in China on the top end.
Yeah.
Only rivaling, with Lafite, with Longdai and Aoyun, but they produce much smaller quantities. And China is really changing now because that the policy in 2025 buy Chinese, so they want to buy a lot more, and we are giving them a reason now to buy their own wines. They're beginning to be proud of what they can buy from us and others. There's about 15 other top wineries, and they're all doing well because we are producing really good stuff now.
And do you think that the future is with Bordeaux grapes, or can you see people planting other things? I mean, I know that you have a dream of planting Gruner Veltliner in China as a first.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Cabernet Sauvignon will be a dominant force because it's 80% of the acreage is Cabernet Sauvignon. So this is not going to go away. I know that Pinot Noir from France in particular, and sometimes also from China, is making some progress. But China will not always be the country with 90% red wine consumption. So it definitely will go white for rather sooner than later. And there will be a basket of grape varieties like Chardonnay, like Riesling, and definitely I'll try my Gruner as well.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to ask you, because we're running out of time and I don't want to keep you all evening, although I could talk to you all evening because it's fascinating. Just tell us a little bit about your interest in the Caucasus, in Georgia, Armenia, and Turkey. Not the Turkey, well, part of Turkey is sort of close to the Caucasus, but you're interested in those areas, aren't you? And aren't you thinking of doing something in Turkey now?
Well, basically, I want to do projects which are a little bit out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to do something in Georgia and Armenia in particular. I even have a team member on my team. She's Nadia from Georgia, but she advises me not to go Georgia this year and maybe not next year because the stability of the region might be endangered a little bit. So she left for Milano to work to live with her mother, because she's a little bit afraid of what's going on, and they know the situation much better than we, because we only get it from the media and they feel it there. So that would be really nice, but that has to wait. I'd rather go Turkey because I love to work with indigenous grapes. And I had a small project a couple of years ago in Turkey already, and it still exists, but I sold it afterwards, and I learned how to play with these indigenous grapes, be it white and be it red. They have so many different grapes, and that's something I still want to explore.
So you're going to make some Turkish wines, are you, with Narinja and Karasa and Vaskari and Kuzguzu and all those things, yeah?
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Anyway, listen, it's been fantastic talking to you. We could talk much longer about China. We have done a podcast as well where there's a little bit more about China in that, because we've done the tasting tonight. But thank you. Good luck with the new chapter. I think it's a really exciting move for not only for Gruner, but also for Austria. It's been fascinating talking to you. Thank you, everybody, for your comments and the thumbs up. Lenz, as ever, a pleasure to talk to you and to share your good humor and personality and sense of fun and your sense of innovation. I love the fact that you're still innovating, man.
I will not cease to do this. Otherwise,
yeah,
I'll
exactly. Die. Fantastic. Okay. Anyway, lovely to see you, and hope to see you very soon in London or Austria or somewhere in the world. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks, Tim.
See you, my friend. Bye.
Bye-bye. Cheers. Bye.